Buzzy, improvisational, fast-paced, dynamic street photography demands that we take a lot of photos. Some of them good, very few great, most of them rejected. So what do we do with them all? I'm going to share some ideas. Welcome to How I See It. So, first thing, I suppose I get home from a photography day and typically I'm really keen to see the images, so I load them up onto Lightroom. If I can, best practice I think is to leave them for a while, because that way you get rid of a lot of the subjectivity. You know, if you spent a long time wanting to make a shot work, you might invest more in making it work in the post process. You know, creating something, forcing something when there really isn't something there. But when I do come around to looking at them, I'll go and do an initial trawl. So I'll have a look at my images and I'll go through, and the ones I like, I'll just give a 1-star rating to. Anything that I absolutely missed, shots of the ground, somebody's walked past and I'm too late, it's blurred beyond any use. Anything that I know I can't use, I will give an X rating to, and I will delete those. I just don't need them taking up my space, because space, even though it's relatively cheap now, it is at a premium. So I'll delete those. So I'm left with some 1-star ratings and the 0-star ratings. The images that I probably ought to reject and delete, but can't quite bring myself to do so. I know from experience that very often I'll look back through an old folder and I'll find images that I'd initially ignored that I think actually there's something there. If I just crop in a bit or zoom back a bit or convert it to black and white or desaturate it, whatever it might be, I might be able to make them work. So there's a whole pile of images, the vast majority, with no star rating, and I'll keep them just in case. So when I've got my first lot of 1-star images, I suppose that's effectively the beginning of a digital portfolio. And it tends to live on hard drives, loads of hard drives. And luckily nowadays, memory on hard drives is comparatively cheap. So I don't mind too much storing all of those images on the hard drives, and I use software to manage that library. I print a few, and I really like this sort of 6x4 size, postcard size, I guess, image size, because it's bigger than the images you'd see on your phone on Instagram, for example, but it's not huge, doesn't take up a huge amount of space, perhaps more importantly, doesn't cost a fortune in ink or printer paper, but it enables me to live with the images. Sometimes I will frame them, like this one here, just makes it feel like I've invested a bit more in it, maybe it's one I like a bit more. Other times I just leave them as paper images, and I leave them around the room. I live with them for weeks, sometimes months, and in that whole process I'll start to see, oh, I think maybe that one would work better with a crop, that one would work better in black and white, that one doesn't work, that one's too busy. Whatever it might be, I'll make those decisions about those images, and from there, some of them, I suppose it acts as a kind of filter, I may decide to print larger or to move to my website and maybe post on Instagram. So larger can mean a 3. Here's this shot was taken on Valentine's Day, the chap who looks very much like Spider-Man. Just a great scene underneath Hungerford Bridge in London. I also print much larger, and I have one of those old artist style portfolio cases. Here's one I prepared earlier, and in there it's just a really untidy filing system really, but lots of images that I've printed out over the years. Sometimes I've had them framed up and lived with them and enjoyed having them. Sometimes they're more recent and they're ones that have come down, and I've just put them away in the portfolio case. So that's quite a nice thing to do. It's getting quite heavy now. And then every year I make myself an annual. Just one copy of the book, And just for my own enjoyment, just images that I took. So this is last year, 2023, a whole range of different things, colour and black and white, although these all seem to be colour that I'm flicking through at the moment, just a random selection. But it's nice to have everything in a book, coffee table book really, and when people come round and say, how's your photography going, Hugh, or have you taken any pictures recently, you can grab one of these off the shelf and show them what you've done. So I've got one that's 2023, 2022, and I just use an online company for helping me make these. 2021, and I think I must go back about 10 years with these now. No thought of publishing other than for myself, and it's quite nice to see how my photography has improved and my style has changed over that time. So I do quite enjoy that record of things. Increasingly, street photography seems to be finding its way into galleries and exhibitions, opportunities to share your work with a wider audience. These lucky breaks can be small and local. I had a small part in an exhibition a few years ago, and this is just a flyer from that. It was called The Seeing Eye, and it was a fantastic opportunity for me because it became it was a platform really to show my work and to meet people. I was able to give a talk, and I sold quite a few framed prints and signed prints of my images. So the opportunity to exhibit your work is always a fantastic opportunity. Do take it. It may be a local art fair, anything fairly small, even a room that you rent yourself. It could be putting images up in a cafe, for example, or a barber's shop, and giving them some of the commission on any that you sell, or even through to some of the huge prestigious galleries if your work really does get spotted. Photo books and zines have become a really popular way to compile street photography. These could be thematic, they could be subject-based, they could be about a specific location, or they may be more comprehensive, really just showcasing all aspects of a photographer's work. Self-publishing has made it easier to put your work out there for all to see, and you can distribute independently or online or in niche bookshops. And I've got a few here. So this is Bump Books, and well, these are both Bump Books. One I picked up last year when I was in Chicago from Anthony Manias, Tony. Small format. I think Bump Books are generally all the same. 30 pages of Tony's images of Chicago. And more recently, I picked up this one from Paul Harrison, someone I've known for a while through Instagram. Went to the launch of this fantastic zine called We Go to the Gallery. Paul specialises in taking images in art galleries, and I went along to the launch of this and amazingly found a picture of my wife in the zine, unbeknownst to her and unbeknownst to him. And a few others. So 60 Minutes, this is from David Bergamini, who I followed on Instagram have followed on Instagram for a very long time. Some really good images using strong light and shade. And Mark Fernley, his shadow stories from Japan. Really nice, relatively inexpensive way of getting his work out there. And of course you can go a little bit more grandiose if you want, and I picked up this book fairly recently from, again, somebody else who I've followed for a while on Instagram, Chris Harrison, who is in Brighton in England, a place that I know well and shoot often. And he's really captured the sort of the more quirky side of Brighton. It's a fantastic book with some really strong images in it. Trying to find some of my favourites desperately and wishing that I'd put post-it notes in there to point them out to you. But it's a really excellent body of work that Chris has put together for us here. Self-published, beautiful book with a sort of a cloth, or at least a card binding. Maybe it is slightly clothy, but yeah. So just goes to show really the extent of things that are available to you with modern publishing techniques, and much cheaper ways of being able to do that than there would have been not that long ago. Perhaps for most of us, social media is the place where most of our photos end up. After all, I think that's really pretty much the way most people are connected nowadays when we're talking about street photography. The rise of digital media has meant that the huge numbers of street photographers now connected to each other on social media. Instagram, Threads, Twitter, X, TikTok, Flickr, Facebook, Vero, 500px, SmugMug. There's an almost seemingly endless menu of places where you could post your images, and now is not the time to go into social media and the whys and wherefores, pros and cons, etc. But it is a way to get feedback almost instantly for your images, and perhaps more importantly, a way to engage with a global audience. It's fascinating to scroll through your Instagram feed, have a look back and see how your own personal style has changed, but also have a look at your own feed and how you curate it. So maybe just seeing street photography images in there, always a good place to visit. But the other thing you can do is you can write a blog, perhaps on your own website or in a space like Substack, Reddit, sharing stories behind your images, telling the story of the day that you went out and shot, how you got a particular image, what you were thinking, what you were trying to capture, were you trying to tell a story or make a point. But by doing that, you begin to build a following, and that allows a deeper interaction with your audience, hence the social media. And as I've said before in a blog, Instagram is a bit like the best pub in the world. I'll say more about that another time. One avenue which is increasingly being entered by street photographers is that of competitions and awards. These can often be a stepping stone to greater recognition, even with prizes, and sometimes these lead to financial support or publishing opportunities. Either way, winning or being shortlisted can be a significant achievement which adds credibility to you as a photographer and leads to greater exposure, because very often just by being shortlisted you will be mentioned in the press and on websites, and that draws other people to finding you, whether it be on your Instagram or if you have a website, going in there and finding that. I've been shortlisted 3 times in the British Photography Awards, always the bridesmaid, never the bride or the groom. This one is from 2 or 3 years ago. I called it On the Dotted Line, a chap in the bar at the Curzon on Shaftesbury Avenue, and before that I had an image of a chap in the village Fate where I live, sitting with a balloon on his own at the back of a tent waiting for his younger relatives to arrive. A shot that I perhaps wouldn't have taken because I hadn't planned on taking the camera with me, picked it up at the last minute. Similarly, the last time I was shortlisted last year was a black and white image this time, and it was one where I was on my way back to the car from the train, from the tube, and perhaps would have put my camera away. I was walking through an empty multi-storey car park at night, perhaps not the safest thing, happened to look over a wall and saw this image just waiting to be taken. So there's a message in there somewhere. But being shortlisted, even if you don't win, is really a significant achievement and says a lot about you and your photography. Most street photography is pursued for personal satisfaction or artistic expression, but it can have commercial applications. Images of real, relatable people and scenes can be very effective in advertising and marketing campaigns because they offer an authenticity that a staged photo shoot is never going to come close to getting. But having said that, it does mean if your images are going to be used in that sort of environment, in that way, that there are significant legal aspects that need to be navigated around the images of people. Anybody being used in an advertising campaign in your images is going to have a model release, and that is a considerable hassle when you've taken a candid image of somebody in the street. So, you know, for the most part, commercial use of street photography is very slim. However, It may well be that as a street photographer your style is liked by a commercial agency or a company, and you may be approached to shoot in a candid way, although the actual people you're shooting may well be models who have signed a model release. So commercial use is a small area. It's not impossible, but it's very much a niche area of street photography. Once a photographer has a few years of experience underneath their belt, then they can share that experience and use their images to teach others. So you can host workshops. These may be in a studio or in a lecture theatre, or they may be out on the street, perhaps one-to-one or with a small group. Or you can talk to camera clubs, and in either of those situations you can teach others your skills and the ethics of street photography using your images to illustrate the point. It might be about composition. It might be about lighting, or interacting with subjects in public places. But don't underestimate how much knowledge and expertise you will have built up just by being out on the streets. Use your images to help others develop theirs. Some street photographers use their images to document specific periods in time or cultural historic moments, and these projects can often be archived and used as exhibitions or for research to tell people about certain periods in time, certain movements, or certain groups of people, certain communities. And I think that sometimes the passing of time actually brings something to a set of images. If you imagine a photograph taken in the Tube 60, 70 years ago, say the 1950s, 60s, and there'd probably be lots of people smoking, that's something you just don't see nowadays. At the time it would have been really commonplace, and probably a lot of people wouldn't even have thought anything of it and wouldn't have bothered to take the picture. But looking at it now, it's really redolent of the time and very, very atmospheric. Similarly, newspaper readers standing at a bus stop, something you just don't see nowadays. Everybody's busy with their earpods in and their phones out. And I know a lot of photographers today shy away from taking images of people on their mobile phones, but to me, that's a really important image to get, because although they're easy to come by, in years to come, those will be historic images. So the archival and documentary side of street photography is an important one, and I think is only going to get more and more important for your images as time goes by. The last area I want to talk about is that really of business or pleasure, and I've got these business cards here, which to me sometimes act as a get out of jail free card or a license to shoot, but they're something I like to carry with me. They have my details on the back with a QR code which will take you to my website, my Instagram, my YouTube, my Threads, my X account. And they're really handy to hand to people who maybe confront you on the street and wonder what you're doing. This just somehow legitimizes you. I remember in lockdown being stopped by several over-officious people at Waterloo Station when there was nobody about asking me why I was taking photographs. And I handed them one of my business cards and they said, "Oh, it's all right, he's a street photographer." Without that, I wouldn't have, well, I wasn't really supposed to take the pictures anyway, because you're not supposed to photograph at Waterloo, but I do it all the time. But the card just gave me a little bit more leverage. What I like about these cards, which are from moo.com, is that they have a different image on the back of every card. So you can use them as a gallery to kind of show people you meet the sorts of things that you do, and I think that's a really nice thing to have. The other thing that I do is I print these cards. They're postcards, and you can buy these ready made up on the back with a blank on the front in which you can print your own images, and this just acts as a really nice thank you card and something that you can hand out. Thank you. So the journey of a street photograph from that first click to wherever it finds its home is as varied as the subjects that you pass each day on the street. And through education, documentary, commercial use, these images can continue to inform, to inspire and to provoke long after that click. Knowing more about the potential trajectory of your images can help you to be more intentional about how you share and use your photos. Street photography doesn't only capture the moment, but it serves a purpose way beyond that click. If you've enjoyed today's video, do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.